Gronk, Gronk, Gronkity Gronk, Gronkity Gronk, Gronkity Gronk, Gronkity Gronk.
A big hello to you. Welcome back to the channel. It is so great to see you and I hope I find you well. I'm Jennifer Kirk, welcoming you up here to the loft on Weir Yard. Now today we've got something just a little bit different. Now, as a lot of you probably already know, I do quite like my Gronks, and these are the shunting diesel locomotives that are notionally class 08 through to class 12, and I guess you could probably include the class 13 as some kind of mega Gronk. But I've decided I'm going to go through every single Gronk I've got in my collection and show you just what there is, because a lot of people do ask me, like, what have you got? Well, it is a vast collection, and today I'm going to delve into all of the Gronks. So come with me in association with Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. Shop at the full range available today from tramfabrique.co.uk. Additional support comes from Rails of Sheffield. Sell to the name you know and trust. Buy, sell or exchange any age or any gauge. Call them now for the very best price. Check them out today at the link below. But I'm really looking forward actually to showing you some of my favourite locomotives in my collection, and there's probably a good few here that you've probably never seen, didn't even realise that I had, and quite honestly I've probably got too many. No, wind that back. It's not possible to have too many model railway locomotives, but certainly I've got so many that some of these don't actually get run on the track all that often, if at all. But come with me and let's take a look at all the Gronks. Today we're talking about Gronks, and these are the cupboard monkey's favourite type of locomotives, probably more so because of the slightly silly sounding name. But I thought it was about time that I showed you all of the Gronks that inhabit Weir Yard. So kicking us off, first up is a Bachmann, a Class 8 in BR green with the wasp stripes on the front, and you can see it's got the number D4192. And this is one from the slightly later batches where they started fitting them with metal handrails, and I'll talk a little bit about this as the video progresses, because the handrails on the Class 8s, particularly on the cabs, were very prone to damage, so it's a welcome touch that Bachmann started fitting metal handrails. Originally released, I think it was probably around 2000, 2001. Certainly I remember buying my very first Class 08 shunter, and actually is one which I no longer have, which was the plain green version with a pre-D number on the side, and I always regret having sold that on, and it was one of the models that I sold that made me think actually I probably shouldn't sell models because all that happens is you just miss them. But this particular model I picked up in Arcadia, which is a model shop over in Shaw, so big up to Tim and all at the Arcadia posse, and it came off his second-hand table unboxed at a price that really couldn't be ignored. So it's the first of the Gronks that I'm introducing to you today. And you may have noticed that what you're actually seeing is a part of Weir Yard that you generally don't actually see at all. It is obviously here, and I have done a few videos in this area, but on the Monday Club you never actually see this. The next model which I'm going to show you, we're going over to Hornby for this, and this is D3509, one of the Hornby offerings of the Class 08 shunter. And actually, I like both the Bachmann and the super detailed Hornby shunters. I think they're both really great models. The Hornby one probably edges it on detail, but the Bachmann one is still very credible. And this particular model, you can see there we've got the cab window modelled all the way down, And we've got slightly finer coupling rods there on the bottoms, just a little bit of oil coming off there, because these are run and used locomotives, particularly this one, because this is able to operate on the ABC sections on Weir Yard. So it does actually get a lot of use. You can see that Hornby, they've got white painted metal handrails, so they solved that problem from the start. And one of the things that actually really plays into the hands of the Hornby model is that they natively support sound fitting, and there is a TTS decoder and speaker setup for the Hornby Class 08, which is just a drop-in fit, which means that if you can find them, and they are actually quite desirable, they do sell out very, very quickly when they do come into stock, then this is a great way of getting an economical sound fitted Class 08 shunter. Now that's the last of the BR Green versions, and I'm going to move on now to the Rail Blue, and the first one up here is 08762, and this is one of the earlier Class 8s from Bachmann, and I told you a little bit before about those cab handles. So you can see there the problem with them. That one has actually cracked through handling and has been very carefully put together, and in fact just literally there with my thumb it has just cracked and broken, and yeah, as you can see, these are an absolute nuisance, and one of the things that I must look into is whether Bachmann do the metal ones as spare parts. It's still okay on this side, but this is 08762, and if memory serves me correct, this was from the second batch of Class 08 shunters that Bachmann released. The first batch, the Rail Blue version, was 08623, if I remember correctly, and it's a model that actually I've been looking for that for quite some time, missed out on it first time around, and have never really seen one for sale at a decent price since. This is one which we got one of the 247 developments nameplates on. So this is actually Zoe. I named this after the cupboard monkey, but that is the first of the Rail Blue Class 08 shunters that are here on Weir Yard. The next one was quite an interesting development from Bachmann. Not resting on their laurels, they actually introduced the earlier hinged door varieties. So these have a few body side detail differences. We do have the metal handrails, but 08243 also has these hinges on the bonnet doors, so you can just see them there. And if I fish back out 08762, you can see that it doesn't have the big hinges on those body side doors. One of the other things that Bachmann have tooled up for is a huge number of different little boxes along the side. These are for auxiliary equipment, things like compressors, vacuum ejectors, things like that. And I've never seen such a variety across their range, and it does seem that they've got slides in their tool which really do allow them to pretty much produce any version of the Class 08 shunter. So that's 08243. But the final Rail Blue Class 08 shunter that Weir Yard's fleet possesses is the Liverpool Street Station Pilot. We're moving back to Hornby here, and we've got the grey roof, which those previous two didn't have, and this was a little bit of a depot pet, I suspect. But this is sound fitted with that Hornby TTS sound decoder system, and you can see as well we've got those thinner side rods. This is something that Hornby did particularly well. We've got the white wall tyres and just a few other little knickknacks on this just to make it a little bit different from your standard Class 08 shunter, but it really is a lovely model. And as 08528, that's number 5 in the Weir Yard Class 08 fleet. Now, we've exhausted the kind of bog standard BR liveries. I don't have any in BR Black, but I'm going to move on to a couple of models next. And these were special edition versions. These were done exclusively for the Bachmann Collectors Club. Now this one, 08507, is really interesting because it's completely in faded paintwork. So you can see the faded yellow, the faded blue, and then it's factory weathered. And this was right back when Bachmann were first starting to dabble with factory weathering, and it's a pretty credible job, and it's the only time they've ever issued any model that I'm aware of in a faded paintwork livery. So even before they weathered this, the paintwork, the colours were specially chosen to give it this kind of been through the carriage washers far too many times sort of look, been out in the sun. And I just fell in love with this when it was announced. I was a member of the Collectors Club, so I was one of the first people, I think, who just ordered one. Now, they weren't actually as fast a seller as other Collectors Club models have been, and quite surprised at the Great Electric Train Show to have seen several of these as new in box on sale for actually a really great price, down at about £80. So they are out there and reasonably easy to find, but I think that they're well worth having if you want a slightly faded, work-worn Class 08 shunter. The next model is probably one of the more modern liveries that I have, and this again was a Bachmann Collectors Club exclusive, and this is Captain Nathaniel Darrell, and this is from the port of Felixstowe, this particular livery. Although this exact Class 08 shunter, I photographed it, well, say I did, I was photographed in front of it by the Cupboard Monkey at Shildon, at Locomotion, where this appears to have ended up as the shunter for Shildon. So I don't know what the full story is, but certainly at one point this was the Class 08 shunter, which has ended up at the port of Felixstowe, and the Collectors Club did a model, although I didn't buy it from the Collectors Club. Instead, I actually bought this at the Wigan and Leigh Model Railway exhibition, probably about 10 years ago, something like that. The only issue it had was that the cab windows had fallen back into the cab, but that's actually a really easy fix. But the vendor didn't seem to know that, so it was being sold at an incredibly good knockdown price, and I couldn't resist it. I love a Gronk, and whilst it's not a livery that I would have otherwise gone for, the price it was being offered at was just too good to pass up. So that's how this one ended up in the Weir Yard fleet. I'm just going to slide that out of the way. So we're going to move on now to some other special commissions. These are ones which were done by the sadly missed Model Zone. So first up, we've got the Ivor the Engine, but in the RTC livery. Now this model, well, this locomotive, the prototype, has been done as a special commission twice, but in two different liveries. The Signal Box in Rochester originally commissioned Bachmann to do Ivor the Engine in its original Network Southeast livery with its 08 number. The prototype Ivor was then taken into RTC livery after it had been with Network Southeast, and it got repainted into the very attractive reversed blue and red livery of the RTC and gained a 97 number, but it did retain its name, Ivor. So still known as Ivor the Engine, Model Zone, who had kind of taken over the Signal Box, had commissioned Ivor the Engine in the RTC livery as part of their incredibly successful range of RTC commissions, and it was one that sold out almost immediately, along with pretty much every other RTC commission that Model Zone did. And I missed out on it and just completely forgot about it, I guess, because it was so hard to find until the Great Electric Train Show this year. Imagine my surprise when a mint inbox, and when I say mint, I do mean that it had no signs of ever being out of the box and being run, for £80, and I just couldn't believe my luck. And it does show just what kind of bargains there are still out there. I know price is one of the biggest talking points in the hobby, but if you look around, you can still find stuff at affordable prices, and Ivor the Engine was one just such a locomotive. So it's the most recent acquisition for the Weiryard Gronk fleet. Sticking with Model Zone, I've got another one that they commissioned, and this was pretty much the last locomotive that they ever commissioned, pretty much arriving when they filed for bankruptcy. And then there was the great big fire sale as the business wound down. And Starlet, in this very distinctive express parcels livery, was one which was being discounted from new as part of this big fire sale of stock. And I picked her up along with another locomotive that you will see next in a moment. It was originally, the prototype worked at the Red Bank sidings in Manchester. So, a fairly local locomotive, but 08721 is, as far as I'm aware, the only Class 8 shunter that Bachmann have ever issued. In fact, I don't think Hornby have issued either, in this quite distinctive livery of the Red Star Express parcels. So, I bought it during the sale at the end of Model Zone, and it's been a pride of place model in my fleet ever since. The next one I bought the same time as Starlet, but it was a commission that Model Zone had made quite some time previously, and it had kind of stuck around. It was not one of the better selling Model Zone special commissions. They did a few Longmoor Military Railway liveried items, and some of those did sell out very, very quick. I do remember a suburban coach, I think it was, in LMR livery, and that sold out almost immediately. But Basra, which isn't strictly speaking a Class 08 shunter, I think the prototype is much more like a Class 11. But certainly for me, the Gronks are Class 08 through to Class 12, and I guess you could call the Class 13 the Mega Gronk. But this particular model I just picked up because it was cheap in the fire sale at the end of Model Zone. I was already buying Starlet, so I thought, well, I'll just grab one of those at the same time. So I've got number 878, Basra, in the Longmoor Military Railway blue, and it's a very distinctive livery with the red chassis, springs picked out in black, and no wasp stripes whatsoever. So a slightly unusual model, and certainly one Bachmann done. Sir Guy Williams, the 280 Wartime Austerity, and they've more recently done the other 280 War Austerity in the Longmoor Railway livery that did exist. And Hornby have done in the past their Hunslet Austerity in a number of LMR liveries, and I think the EFE range currently carries one in that livery. So quite a popular livery, just for some reason not on the Class 11 shunter. The next Class 08 that I'm bringing in to show you is in departmental grey, and this one has a bit of a story to it. You can see that those plastic cabside handrails completely gone on one side and damaged on the other, and there is also missing front steps too. The locomotive works just fine. It is DCC fitted. I did have to hardwire her, but she tells a tale of when my shed got broken into, and all of the damage that you see on her, particularly those missing front steps, was as a result of her having been just thrown into a bag and just treated like utter garbage. In fact, I can also see we're missing one of the coupling rod pins as well. I'm going to have to go hunting for that. But she's led a hard life thanks to Crims, but she was recovered when the Crims were stupid enough to try and list my models on eBay after I'd got lists of what had been stolen and all the distinguishing features out there. So I did get her back, but she does need a little bit of love, care and attention. But not my only Gronk with departmental livery, far from it. The other one that I have is actually also my only Class 09 shunter. And 09012, Dick Hardy, was an early release from Hornby of their Gronk. And of course, the Class 09s they're pretty much a Class 08 shunter, but with different gearing, so that they had a slightly higher top speed to be able to move out on the main line at the expense of the amount that they could pull. And it was a compromise that the southern region of BR were quite prepared to take. And of course, in latter years, a number of Class 08 shunters were then converted to Class 09s. So it is a very useful class, but does share a huge amount in common with the Class 08 shunters. Now, Dick Hardy, again, a veteran of the break-in to my previous layout in the shed, suffered a little bit of damage, but nowhere near as much as the other departmental liveried model that I showed you. And she actually was the first locomotive to run out there after most of my collection was recovered, and still supporting CID weathering, the kind of black powder that they brush on everything, which is a real pain in the neck to get off, I must admit. Which was for the purpose of trying to see if they could get fingerprints off her. But it's my only Class 09 in the fleet. We've still got more though, and I'm moving now on to what is probably my favourite livery on any locomotive, but this is 08 800 in Intercity Swallow livery. It's a Bachmann model. Again, from the slightly earlier batches, we've got those awful plastic handrails on the cab that are so prone to damage. But this particular model was an early purchase for me in my Class 08 fleet. But it always looks a bit weird because it's got that very clean white at the bottom, whereas the coaches have a more dark grey. And it always looks wrong to my eyes, the locomotives that are painted with the white lower stripe instead of the shade of grey. And certainly I think they changed very quickly to the shade of grey on the prototypes, simply because it didn't show the muck-up as much. But it's a very useful locomotive in my fleet, and certainly one that I'm quite pleased to have. And that leads us to the final Gronk in my fleet, and this is also in Intercity livery. This is Piccadilly. She is sound fitted, again with that Hornbeat TTS sound, 08673. And she is one of the prides of the fleet because she does run incredibly well, plus she is sound fitted. And I do love this livery. Again, it's got that slightly cleaner white band underneath, and we've got the opening doors, which was the other hallmark of the Hornby Class 08 shunters. But she is the final Gronk in my fleet, giving us a grand total of 14 Class 08 and derivative shunters. So cheating a little bit because we've got a Class 09 and a sort of pseudo Class 11 as well in this bunch. But that is the Weir Yard Gronks. Well, I hope you really enjoyed this video, and certainly there's some interesting liveries there, I thought, in my collection that I've picked up over the years, and I can't believe it's over 20 years since I first started buying Class 08 shunters from Bachmann. It's actually quite an old model, but it really does hold its own, and I do like the Hornbeat Super Detail model as well. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments section down below. What do you think of the Gronks, and do you have a pretty impressive collection too? Or are there a few of the liveries that you've seen today and you thought, I didn't know that existed, I want one of those, and you're going to go out on the hunt to pick up your own? I'd love to hear from you. Do please leave a comment. And don't forget as well that you can head on over to Patreon and help support the channel to keep making the videos that you want to see. And we've got a whole host of different tiers to suit everybody, so that from as little as $1 a month you can help us to keep making the videos that you want to see. But don't forget to tickle that like button, share this video, and subscribe to the channel too if you haven't already done so. Ring the bell to be the first to know about new videos as they come out. And you can check out our complete merch store just down there underneath the video and pick up your stylish hoodies, t-shirts, and so much more. But until next time, this is me, Jenny Coates, and you take great care of yourself. Happy modelling. Bye for now. Today's video is sponsored by Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders designed to be fully compatible with every manufacturer's locomotive. Visit train-o-matic.com to browse the full range and see what they've got suitable for you. Additional support comes from Rails of Sheffield. Sell to the name you know and trust. Family-run business purchasing collections for over 50 years. From single items to lifetime collections. No collection is too small or too big. Buy, sell or exchange, any age or any gauge. Rails will take everything: locos, coaches, wagons, track work, controllers, accessories. In fact, they'll take absolutely everything and certainly will not cherry pick the best items. Rails are only a phone call away. Call them now for the very best price and get instant cash payment or same-day transfer. Check them out today at the link below. I'd like to send out a huge thanks to everybody who supports me on Patreon, and an extra special huge thanks goes out to Anthony Kidson, Offshore Allen, Michael Lockie, Helen Sink, Gary Lewis, David Quinn, Sparky107107, George Botterini, Chris Moss, Robert Steers, Sam Yates, Dale Williams, John N from NC, NYMR-ish, Jonathan Foster, Peter, Clifford Ison, Larry W. Grant, NI Railways 4000 class, Ian Coulson, Alan Dickerson, Eddie Popper, Karen Nichol, Medwin Williams, Crossways Point Junction, 3B Rail, Jennifer Horton, and James Beckett. Thank you. Without you guys, I couldn't do this.